Since its launch in 2007, the Uncharted franchise has always revolved around one character, Nathan Drake, but now Naughty Dog is taking a chance with Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. So, is it worth it? Let's find out. In the world of storytelling, spin-offs are a thankless task. In most cases, they stem from a successful franchise, whose cast of characters have become so beloved, a select few are given a chance to shine on their own. But from another angle, there are new series tied down by the expectations of their predecessors, resetting a tried and true dynamic while retaining all the character development and world building so far. Surprisingly, The Lost Legacy overcomes these narrative setbacks, acknowledging the past but firmly pushing the plot forward. Unfortunately, the delivery is where things go awry, as the overall pacing feels oddly out of sequence. But with the signature shootouts and parkour, as well as a greater emphasis on exploration, The Lost Legacy is an entertaining though compromised Uncharted adventure. Shortly following the events of Uncharted 4, The Lost Legacy stars Chloe Frazer and Nadine Ross, former enemies turned partners in their search for ancient Indian treasure. But their progress is continuously impeded by Asav, the vicious rebel leader and black market trader whose stolen artifacts bankroll a nearby civil war. Now the pair must outpace the heavily armed mercenaries to recover the Tusk of Ganesh before Asav activates his brutal counterattack. If that sounds overly simplistic, it's because it is. However, The Lost Legacy's standard action narrative and generic bad guys usually sit in the background, with most story beats focusing on the developing friendship between Chloe and Nadine. A smart concept in theory, but the execution falls flat. The audience is never given a believable reason these two would want to work together. In fact, many of the early scenes are used to establish a mutual distrust. Of course, their kinship eventually forms as they work side by side in death-defying situations, but the way this is communicated is awkward at best and forced at worst. During the early periods of the game, Chloe and Nadine look for a series of switches throughout a vast area, and like clockwork, once a gear is activated, they stop to recite their backstories. There are smaller moments during gameplay where brief anecdotes are shared, and these do a much better job communicating each character's personalities. But for the most part, their relationship and Nadine's motivation is skimmed over for snarky quips. Thankfully, the voice cast's superb performances as well as the gorgeous facial animations always make cutscenes enjoyable. Just don't think about them too much. As a standalone DLC to Uncharted 4, The Lost Legacy's gameplay is nearly identical to its predecessor. Players run, leap, and climb their way through ancient landmarks and temples within hyperlinear paths. But the general level design veils these narrow routes by creating an impressive sense of scale. Even the predictable pre-scripted events of crumbling ledges and cliffsides reinforce the danger of Chloe's surroundings. The best example of these are the extravagant set-piece sections, where the duo dash through dynamic environments with reckless abandon. These stages boil down to a theme park ride with disasters queued to the player's locations as they're funneled down a specific route. But that's not to take away from the clever patterns, which involve just enough interaction to make them thrilling while still giving the feel of a catastrophe. Though the most enjoyable moments of The Lost Legacy come at a much slower pace. Early on, Chloe and Nadine must explore a large section of an Indian jungle, discovering hidden shrines to unlock their final destination. The order is left entirely up to the player, allowing them to stealthily eliminate guards or go head-on for a gunfight, stop by a tower for extra hints, or identify locations on their own. The combination of driving through beautiful locations in a jeep and puzzle solving is so compelling, you'll want to complete the extra side missions before moving on. As mentioned before, direct combat is largely optional, so long as players can avoid enemy detection. The use of shotguns, pistols, rifles, explosive RPGs, and grenades make for exciting cover-based gun battles, especially with the excellent sound design conveying incoming shots and shouting mercenaries. But the bullet-resilient enemies tend to undercut the overall tension, especially when compared to the instant kills of stealth attacks. The only weak link in the gameplay remains the bumbling hand-to-hand combat, which is thankfully only a small portion of the 7-hour campaign. As a bonus, Lost Legacy also grants access to the previously released competitive multiplayer and wave-based co-op. Just as before, they're nice inclusions to the overall package. Though be warned, many active players have had a 1.5-year head start. Living up to the Uncharted name, the presentation remains a bleeding-edge example of lighting, textures, and animation. Each and every object is given a remarkable amount of detail. Small touches such as weather damage or splashed mud sell the impression of natural environments, while the source lighting effects display the dark and dingy environments of abandoned temples. Even as standalone DLC, it's one of the best-looking games of the year. So, is it worth it? Yes. Everything players have come to expect from an Uncharted title is in The Lost Legacy. The visuals are stunning, the action scenes remain gripping, and the new open-world environment is an excellent addition to the franchise. Yes, the character development and plot are sadly underwritten, which is a major disappointment. But excluding the story, The Lost Legacy is another fantastic chapter in the series. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy is currently available on the PlayStation 4 for $40. If you've had a chance to play it, let me know what you thought. And if you haven't, let me know if you plan on picking it up. My name is Colin Tanner, and I'll see you in the next video.